Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Continue reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 18, text 58. Makchita sarva durgani mat prasadat tarishyasi atha chetvam ahankaran na shoshyasi vinakshyasi. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So Krishna is continuing to give instructions to Arjuna. He's saying, become conscious of me. Krishna is God. He's saying, become conscious of me, become Krishna conscious. And by doing that, one can overcome the obstacles of conditioned life. In this material life is called conditioned life. We are conditioned by the three modes of nature. How? By Krishna's mercy, by the mercy of God. We become God conscious or Krishna conscious. Then by God's mercy, by God's grace, we can overcome the obstacles of conditioned life. But Krishna is saying, however, if you do not work in such consciousness, if you think you are independent of me, means acting through false ego. Our false ego is when we think we are independent of God. That is our false ego. Not hearing. Krishna is giving us instructions. God is giving us instructions in Bhagavad Gita. He's the Paramatma in our heart. Uh, he is left behind the Srimad Bhagavatam. We don't take instructions from them. We will be lost. So means acting out of false ego, we get lost. Not being Krishna conscious or God conscious means disconnecting ourselves from God, not understanding we are part and parcel of God. A person in full Krishna consciousness is not unduly anxious, but executing the duties of his existence. The foolish cannot understand this great freedom from all anxiety. For one who acts in Krishna consciousness, Lord Krishna becomes the most intimate friend. So, we in conditioned life, we are anxious. This is the material world, we get fearful, situations change, we don't know what's happening, how to deal with the situation, we get anxious about whatever activities we have to do. But how to get free from this anxiety? Pure devotee, one who is acting in Krishna consciousness. He's understood his relationship with God. I'm part and parcel of God. I am working under God's control. So then there is no anxiety. Understanding God is my best friend. So no anxiety, just like a child. Child has no anxiety. Child knows, oh, my mother is always going to take care of me. So similarly, the pure devotee, he knows, oh, God will always take care of me. Krishna will always take care of me. So for one who acts in Krishna consciousness, Lord Krishna becomes the most intimate friend. He always looks after his friend's comfort and gives himself to his friend. So Krishna is our best friend. Suhridam Sarvabhutanam, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5. He's the best friend of every soul. We each are individual souls, and he's the best friend of each and every one of us. He always looks after his friend's comfort and gives himself to his friend, who is so devotedly engaged working 24 hours a day to please the Lord. So the pure devotee and God, they have a very intimate relationship. The devotee is working to please God, and God is always taking care of the pure devotee, always making sure that his friend is comfortable. God is the best friend. Krishna is the best friend of everyone. So, one who realizes this, one who's working to please God, or one who's working to please Krishna, Krishna also takes care of them. It's mutual, it's not one sided. Therefore, no one should be carried away by the false ego of the bodily concept of life. One should not falsely think himself independent of the laws of material nature or free to act. So, what happens in conditioned life? What we are thinking, I'm the body, I can do whatever I like, I am free from the laws of God, that there is no control over me, I can do whatever I want. That is our false ego. We are not able to understand. We are being controlled by the modes of nature, by laws of God. So, but as soon as he acts in Krishna consciousness, he is liberated, free from the material perplexities. So, one who understands, I am part and parcel of God. I have a duty towards God. Let me serve God. Let me please God. Then that is liberation. He is in fact free to act. He rises beyond the modes of nature. As Krishna says, that Brahma Bhuta Prasanatmana Sochati na Kankshati Samasarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param. And that platform, one attains pure devotional service. When one is understood, I am not the body, I'm spirit, soul, part and parcel of God. I have a duty towards God, I have to serve God, and he begins serving. So that is a platform of liberation where pure devotional service begins. So one should note very carefully that one who is not active in Krishna consciousness is losing himself in the material whirlpool, in the ocean of birth and death. No conditioned soul actually knows what is to be done and what is not to be done. But a person who acts in Krishna consciousness is free to act because everything is prompted by Krishna from within and confirmed by the spiritual master. So one who is Krishna conscious, he is following the rules and regulations of Bhakti Yoga. He is under the guidance of a pure devotee, a representative of Krishna. And within the heart, he is listening to the Paramatma because he's understood I'm not the body, I am spirit soul. So he's acting in Krishna consciousness, and real freedom is that point in Krishna consciousness. We don't understand in this material world, we are actually bound by the laws of God, by the modes of nature. But once we realize our real position in relation to God, that's when real independence begins. One is free to act in a way to please God. Then the modes are not going to influence the person. So Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to come to this platform. Yad ahankaram ashritya na yotsya iti manyase mithyesha vyavad sayaste prakriti swam niyokshyati. If you do not act according to my direction and do not fight, then you will be falsely directed. By your nature, you will have to be engaged in warfare. Arjuna was a military man and born of the nature of the Kshatriya. Therefore, his natural duty was to fight. But due to false ego, he was fearing that by killing his teacher, grandfather, and friends, he would incur sinful reactions. So, Krishna was saying earlier, we heard that everyone is born of a nature, whether he's a Kshatriya, Brahman, or Shudra, Vaishya. So now we may say, oh, but there is no Brahman, there is no Kshatriya, no Shudra, no Vaishya. But yet, each of us have a nature, like Krishna was describing the qualities, resourcefulness, leadership, those who are in those managerial positions, administration, all that is protection, those leadership qualities, those are qualities of Kshatriya. One may be more inclined to trading, finance, banking. That is more of Vaishya quality. Or one may be more inclined to studies, uh, like the scientists, doctors. So Brahmanical, they like to study. So each of us have a nature. And Krishna was telling Arjuna, by your nature, you are a fighter. Now you're saying you're not going to fight. You're going to go retire to the forest. But it's your nature. Eventually you are going to fight. Now you're thinking that by by engaging in this warfare, you're going to become sinful. But in fact, it is your duty now. So act. Actually, he was considering himself master of his actions, as if he were directing the good and bad results of such work. He forgot that the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present there, instructing him to fight. So Krishna wanted this war to happen, and Krishna is telling him, you fight, you do your duty. You are a Kshatriya. These people have wronged you and your family, wrongfully taking the kingdom. The world needs the emperor like Yudhishthir. We hear in Bhagavatam that how after the war, after Yudhishthir became the emperor, how everyone is so happy. The whole earth is so happy. The cows are so happy. They're just, milk is overflowing from the udders. They are flooding the fields with milk. The earth is giving so much fruits and vegetables and the minerals and jewels. Like everyone is so happy. So God wanted the earth to be ruled by Yudhishthir, who is a great devotee. So the condition of the forgetfulness of the conditioned soul. The Supreme Personality gives directions as to what is good and what is bad, and one simply has to act in Krishna consciousness to attain the perfection of life. So we have forgotten, we in this material world, we have forgotten that we have a relationship with God. We have forgotten that we are part and parcel of God. We are thinking we are independent of God. And so we are acting in that material consciousness. But Krishna, he's giving us good direction here in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna or his devotees, they come time and time again to teach us how to act in Krishna consciousness. When one acts in Krishna consciousness, one can make their life perfect, get out of this material world. No more taking more and more bodies in the material world. Because then one is taught how to act for the pleasure of God. No one can ascertain his destiny as the Supreme Lord can. Therefore, the best course is to take direction from the Supreme Lord and act. Each of us have to do some activity. We cannot say, oh, I'm not going to do anything. No, our modes are going to make us act. So act for the pleasure of God. Act for the pleasure of Krishna. No one should neglect the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or the order of the spiritual master, who is the representative of God. So no one, means each and every one of us should follow God's orders, work for the pleasure of God. Whatever duties we have been given, here God himself has been saying, whatever duties you have, do it and do it as a duty for the satisfaction of God. And so Prabhupada is explaining that no one should neglect the orders of God or of the bona fide spiritual master, the pure devotee who's coming in the disciplic succession, the parampara. He's a representative of God. God has sent him here to teach us about how we can become God conscious, Krishna conscious. One should act unhesitatingly to execute the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that will keep one safe under all directions. So, following whatever duties God has given us, doing those duties for the pleasure of God, so that one does not accumulate karma. Swabhava jena kaunteya nibbadda karmana kartum nechasi yanmohat karishyasi avashopita. Under illusion, you are now declining to act according to my direction. But compelled by the work born of your own nature, you will act all the same, O son of Kunti. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, now I'm telling you to fight. You're saying, no, I'm not going to fight. I'm going to go to the forest. But your nature, you have this modes, you're controlled by the modes. So by your nature, you will fight. So rather you fight now. Become glorious if you're going to fight now. See, work born of your own nature. We, each of us, are controlled by the modes of nature. And by that control, we are inclined towards a particular activity. We are more, attracted to doing certain particular activity because of the modes. So here Krishna is saying, you're inclined to fight. Now I'm telling you to fight, so you should fight. So if one refuses to act under the direction of the Supreme Lord, then he is compelled to act by the modes in which he is situated. Everyone is under the spell of a particular combination of the modes of nature and is acting in that way. But anyone who voluntarily engages himself under the direction of the Supreme Lord becomes glorious. So we are all about acting according to the modes. But if we can understand that, oh, I need to act for the pleasure of God, then one can get out of the material world. Because otherwise that activity will bind us. Krishna is saying in 3rd chapter that work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise work will bind. So now in this chapter, he's clearly explaining what to do. He's saying, do your duty, whatever you need to do for the pleasure of God. And in this way, you can get out of the material world. We may think, oh, renouncing the world, detachment from the world means I need to do nothing, means I should just do nothing. But it's not possible to do nothing. Work has to be performed. This is what Krishna is telling in the entire Bhagavad Gita. But who to offer the result to? Offer the result to Krishna or God. This is what he's saying. And become glorious in this way. Saying, act under the orders of God. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshe arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra rudhani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. So God is there in everyone's heart as Paramatma. The Paramatma is there in each and everyone's heart. It's not that Paramatma is there only in some people's heart who are born in a certain country or a certain community or a certain planet or a certain species. No. Paramatma, God, is situated in everyone's heart, and He is directing, He is giving us the good guidance. This material body is made of material energy. It's like a machine, this body that we are in. But the Paramatma is there in our heart, and He's guiding. Arjuna was not the supreme knower, and his decision to fight or not to fight was confined to his limited discretion. Lord Krishna instructed that the individual is not all in all. We individual souls, we think we are independent of God. We think, oh, that I have nothing to do with God. But what we have to realize is, I am controlled by God. I have a relationship with God. I have a duty towards God. I need to serve God. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, or He Himself, Krishna, as the localized Supersoul, sits in the heart, directing the living being. So, who is the Paramatma? God is the Paramatma. Krishna is the Paramatma. After changing bodies, the living entity forgets his past deeds, but the Supersoul, as the knower of the past, present, and future, remains the witness of all his activities. So we have in the past life, we had another body, but as soon as we give up that body, we forget everything. Whatever was very dear to us, we forgot everything. But Paramatma in the heart, he knows. He knows what we were doing, what was dear to us, what activity we wanted to do, what our desires was. So the Paramatma knows past, present, and future. This is the difference between God and the individual soul. We forget, God never forgets. It's the difference. So, and the Paramatma, he is a witness. He is there with us. Till the time we are in the material world, the Paramatma is with the individual soul, and he's witnessing all our activities. We keep forgetting as we change the bodies, but Paramatma remembers. Therefore, all the activities of living entities are directed by the super soul. Krishna is saying that I'm the Paramatma, from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. He is the overseer and the permitter. So everything is happening under the direction of the Paramatma. Under God's direction, our desires are being fulfilled under the direction of Paramatma. The living entity gets what he deserves and is carried by the material body, which is created in the material energy under the direction of the super soul. So, depending on our desire and our karma, this material energy who is who belongs to God. Who does the material energy belong to? Material energy belongs to God. So, under God's direction, the material energy gives us a new material body based on our desire and our karma. What we deserve and what was a desire, based on that, this material energy is energy of God. Under God's order, we get another material body. So as soon as a living entity is placed in a particular type of body, he has to work under the spell of that bodily situation. So every material body is under the control of the modes of nature. And then depending on what type of body, it depends on the influence of the modes. The modes combined, goodness, passion, and ignorance. How we have combined colors. You know, we mix, uh, like we mix red and white, you get pink, and you mix yellow and blue, you'll get green. like different colors combine to get different colors, right? So similarly, these modes, they combine differently, and then that gives rise to different types of material body. These are the different desires that a living entity has. So every body, every material body is under the control of the modes, different combination of the modes. And based on the modes, one acts. For example, the soul, he is in the body of a tree, so he acts like a tree. When the same soul is in the body of a human being, acts like a human being. So the modes make him act. The soul is the same, but the action is different. Why? Because the modes are differently influencing. A person seated in a high-speed motor car goes faster than one seated in a slower car, though the living entities, the drivers, may be the same. So depending, here Prabhupada is giving the example, one has a fast car, one has a slow car. So the fast car will go faster, the slow car will go slower. The soul. Sometimes it's the same soul. He's driving in a fast car, sometimes he's driving in a slow car. The soul is the same. The car is different. Similarly, by the order of the Supreme Soul, material nature fashions a particular type of body to a particular type of living entity so that he may work according to his past desires. So each of us is an individual soul. Each of us have worked in a particular way in our past life and have our own desires. So based on our desires and based on how we have worked in the past, we get these different types of bodies. The living entity is not independent. We didn't choose what kind of body we want to be in. We are getting it under the laws of God. It's not that we have a choice. Nobody asks. Like we go to order some, we want to order some coffee. They'll say, what coffee you want? Decaf, you want roast, what you want? Americano, espresso, or what kind of milk you want? Oat milk, almond milk, the skim milk. So many choices, but nobody asks us which kind of body you want, which planet, which species, which community. No, we get the body based on the laws of God. One should not think himself independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The individual is always under the Lord's control. This is what we were trying to even understand in Bhagavatam, where Lord Brahma is come to Priyavrat and saying it is the will of God that you should become the emperor. Brahmaji is telling Priyavrat that even me, I'm Lord Brahma, yet I'm under the control of God. He says, Lord Shiva, such a great personality, also he is under the control of God. He says, even Lord Shiva is not independent. Even I'm not independent. Even Narad Muni, such a great personality, is not independent. So no one is independent of God, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The individual is always under the Lord's control. God is the supreme controller. Therefore, one's duty is to surrender, and that is the injunction of the next verse. So God is the supreme controller. We are part and parcel of God. We have a duty towards God. And so it's our duty to surrender to God. Tam eva sharanam gaccha sarva bhavena bharata tat prasadat param shantim sthanam prapsyasi shasvatam. O sign of Bharat, surrender unto him utterly. By his grace, you will attain transcendental peace and the supreme and eternal abode. So, Krishna is telling Arjuna, surrender to God. Hmm? Krishna is God. He's saying surrender. And by God's grace, you will get peace and can go to the spiritual world, the supreme and eternal abode. So everything is happening by the mercy of God or mercy of Krishna. What are we required to do is to understand our position in relation to God and surrender to God. That is our duty as an individual soul. We are individual soul, and so it's our duty to surrender to God. A living entity should therefore surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart, and that will relieve him from all kinds of miseries of this material existence. So God is seated right in our heart, right next to us. We are the individual soul, and God is sitting next to us as the super soul. And what we need to do, we need to surrender to God. And when we surrender, we will become free from all the suffering. This material world, it gives us a lot of suffering, gives us a lot of anxiety, it gives us a lot of pain. If we at all want to be free from that, we need to surrender to God. By such surrender, not only will one be released from all miseries in this life, but at the end, he will reach the Supreme God. So once we surrender to God, not only can we live peacefully in this world till the time we are in this world, but the end of life, when we have to give up this material body, after that, the individual soul can go to the spiritual world, can go to be with God, to see God face to face, to have a relationship with God. The transcendental world is described in the Vedic literature, Rig Veda 1.22.20, as Tat Vishnu Paramam Padam. Since all of creation is the kingdom of God, everything material is actually spiritual. But Paramam Padam specifically refers to the eternal abode, which is called the spiritual sky or Vaikuntha. So this material world is also a creation of God. God has created it. So it is also a kingdom of God. But when Paramam Padam is referred, it means the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, spiritual sky, where the spiritual planets are, where everything is eternal. So this material world also belongs to God. So actually it is also spiritual. Why? Krishna also says, Devi hi esha gunamai, this divine energy of mine. Why divine? Because belongs to God. Everything belongs to God. But right now, because we are thinking this world is separate than God, we are thinking this world is independent of God. That's why it's become material to us. But if we can connect this world to God, we can offer everything that we see to God, it becomes spiritual. But of course, Paramam Padam specifically is referring to the spiritual world, the Vaikuntha sky. The highest planet in the spiritual sky is called Golok Vrindavan. Golok Vrindavan. In the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it is stated, Sarvasya Chaham Hridhi Sanivishta. The Lord is seated in everyone's heart. So, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, Sarvasya Chaham Hridhi Sanivishta. Where is God? He is also seated in everyone's heart. So, this recommendation that one should surrender unto the super soul sitting within means that one should surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So, the Paramatma is in our heart. Paramatma is an expansion of God or Krishna. So one needs to surrender to Krishna, surrender to God. Krishna has already been accepted by Arjuna as the supreme. Arjuna was saying, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, that you are Krishna. Arjuna was telling Krishna, you are God, you are the supreme God. He was accepted in the 10th chapter as Param Brahma, Param Dham. Arjuna has accepted Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead and the supreme abode of all living entities, not only because of his personal experience, but also because of the evidence of great authorities like Narad, Asita, Devala, and Vyasa. So Krishna is God, supreme personality of Godhead. Arjuna is saying this to Krishna, not only because he himself has realized that Krishna is God, Krishna is the supreme person, but also because the great authorities, Narad, Asita, Devala, Vyasadev, these are great authorities of spiritual knowledge. They have so much spiritual knowledge, and they are declaring that God, Krishna, he is the supreme personality of Godhead. So one needs to surrender. Here Krishna is saying surrender. Iti te jnanam akyatam goyat taram maya vimrishyetad asheshena yatte chasi tatha kuru. Thus I've explained to you knowledge, still more confidential. Deliberate on this fully and then do what you wish to do. So here we can see Krishna is telling Arjuna, I have given you more confidential knowledge. You think about it. Deliberate on it fully. Think what you have heard. Then you act based on the knowledge. The Lord has already explained to Arjuna the knowledge of Brahmabhuta. One who is in the Brahmabhuta condition is joyful. He never laments, nor does he desire anything. That is due to confidential knowledge. Krishna also discloses knowledge of the Supersoul. This is also Brahman knowledge of Brahman, but it is superior. So confidential knowledge, understanding that I am not the body, I am the soul. This is confidential knowledge. And one who understands this knowledge, one who realizes this knowledge, is always joyful. He's never lamenting. He's understood, I'm not the body, I'm the soul. So he doesn't desire anything material because he's understood. He's the soul. So this is confidential knowledge. Now Krishna has also given him more confidential knowledge. What is more confidential knowledge? The knowledge of Brahman, that you're the soul, but there is a super soul. There are two, not one. That is more confidential. So there, you know how there's degrees of knowledge, there's levels. So confidential knowledge, understanding that I am soul, not the body. What is more confidential? I am a soul, but there's also a super soul. That is more confidential knowledge. It's superior knowledge. Here the words Yatechasi Tathakuru, as you like, you may act, indicate that God does not interfere with the little independence of the living entity. So God has given us free will. God is saying here, I'm giving you knowledge that there is soul, there is super soul. God is telling Arjuna clearly, your position is to surrender. You are not God. Krishna is telling to Arjuna. You are the individual soul and there is a super soul. So you have to surrender to the super soul. Whenever there's surrender, it means there are two, not one. There's two entities. And here, also it's being said that God does not interfere with the little independence. So God has given us a free will, whether we want to accept God or we want to turn away from God. That is our free will. That's the independence of every individual soul. God does not force us to accept Him. He has given us this choice. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has explained in all respects how one can elevate his living condition. The best advice imparted to Arjuna is to surrender unto the Supersoul seated within his heart. So the Paramatma is there in everyone's heart. We only need to surrender unto Him. We are not the Supersoul, we are the individual soul. So we are also inside the heart of this material body, and there is a Supersoul sitting next to us. So we have to surrender to the Supersoul. There are two, not that we have to surrender to ourselves. That is not logical. We have surrender means there's someone higher. Super soul is higher than us. So we have to surrender to the super soul. This is what God is instructing here in Bhagavad Gita to each of us. By right discrimination, one should agree to act according to the order of the super soul. That will help one become situated constantly in Krishna consciousness. So surrendering to God, acting on behalf of God, acting for the pleasure of God. Krishna consciousness, the highest perfectional stage of human life. Arjuna is being directly ordered by the personality of Godhead to fight. Surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is in the best interest of the living entities. So we are the living entities, we are the individual souls. And what is our best interest? To surrender to God. This is what God Himself is telling us here. This is what Krishna has been telling us. Surrender to me, surrender to me. He's saying, I'm the Paramatma, I'm the super soul in your heart. We are not Krishna. We are part and parcel of Krishna. We are individual soul. We have our own individuality. We have to surrender to God. It is not for the interest of the it's in the best interest of the living entities. So it is in our interest that we surrender to God. It's not in God's interest that we surrender to Him, He is completely self-satisfied. He's Atmara. He does not need anything from us. We need Him. Before surrendering, one is free to deliberate on this subject as far as the intelligence goes. That is the best way to accept the instruction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one may say, why should I surrender? How should I surrender? So Krishna is saying, I've given you the knowledge. You think about what I have spoken, and then you surrender. Use your intelligence. This is what Krishna is saying. Use the intelligence. And then you decide what you want to do. Such instruction comes also through the spiritual master, the bona fide representative of Krishna. So the one who is a real spiritual master, he says, follow Krishna's instruction. Krishna is saying, surrender to me. And the bona fide representative, the pure devotee, is saying, surrender to Krishna. So they are speaking the same thing. There is no contradiction. The bona fide representative, the spiritual master, is speaking whatever Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita, surrender to me. And the spiritual master is saying, surrender to Krishna. Krishna is God. So surrender to God. God is also the Paramatma in our heart. Surrender to the Paramatma in our heart. Not surrender to our own self. Then there is no meaning of surrender. When we are saying surrender, there are two, no? One is surrendering to another. Arjuna and Krishna, they are different entities. They are not the same entity. They're both different. Arjuna is the individual soul, and Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, here Krishna is saying surrender and act in that surrender. So we'll stop here for today. Thank you so much for listening and enjoying it. Shila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Bhavi. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.